Hey folks, how's it going? RedMaster here, and welcome back to another video here on the channel, where today we're sinking our teeth into some balance patch notes, something that we haven't done in quite some time here on the channel. And it's pretty interesting to see, actually. I mean, the game has been running for about 3 weeks now, and while there have been several like minor balance stuff that has been addressed here, some cards have changed. We haven't actually gotten a proper, decent sized list of cards that have been changed in quite some time. This is kind of the first one that we're seeing here, where there's been a couple of reworks, some nerfs, some buffs, more buffs than nerfs, which is cool to see here. And I'm really just looking forward to kind of sharing with you guys my thoughts and opinions on how some of these changes are going to impact the game here. We've already seen some of those changes starting to impact from what I've heard over in the community here. Some certain decks have kind of risen up in prominence. Some others maybe have taken the back seat. Not entirely sure, because we haven't been around since the patch dropped to really get a feel for it. But regardless, I still want to share my opinions here because we've got some great changes nonetheless. So let's go ahead and take a look at the first of our balance patch changes. So the first of our changes to address is Leanna. Now, Leanna kind of received an interesting change here. Her main purpose hasn't really shifted. Instead, it feels like she's been more optimized, honestly, here. As you can see, now she has the leap ability here, or at least give friendly colossi the leap ability, which, if you're unaware of what that is, it's essentially a +1 movement that allows units to also intercept flyers, which is pretty cool. It gives another deck answer to flying units, which I know some people have been looking for, and so this here is, of course, a great example of that. And of course, you also got the summon oak and summon a squirrel for 2 gold, 2 mana, which before it was 4 mana for 2 squirrels. This feels like a bit of a better trade-off. Not only do you have to put in mana here, but you get gold for it as well. You get the oak and the squirrel, so not only do you get the mana back from the oak, but you get a little buffed squirrel, because as long as the oak is around, the oak powers up the squirrel, and so you kind of get that neat little combo synergy there on top of everything. So it's really cool that Leanna has been just, I guess, more optimized in a way. And I heavily expect her to actually show up in a lot more Druid builds now. Because you do have a variety of Druid builds that actually run Elsevier, which, of course, the card next to me, it is a Colossus, but that is also just a generically strong card, which I think people have been playing inside of their Druid builds. And so now being able to throw Leanna in maybe as a single copy here and allow Elsevier or any other Colossi you may be running in the deck to just have that extra movement and also the ability to knock off flyers, which is pretty crucial. I think we'll definitely see people experimenting with this. And of course, Leanna can also intercept flyers herself. She is a mage after all. So again, further option to respond to flyers, if you will. And so I think this is just a great upgrade for her, and definitely expect her to show up in a lot of Druid builds. Overall, I think she's a pretty underutilized card, but I understand why. Colossi have been sort of not really meta prevalent as of recently, and the squirrels kind of seemed a little too expensive, but here I definitely think she maybe has some opportunity to shine. But overall, a solid change. Love to see it. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next balance patch. Alright folks, the next change we're going to be looking at is Ferocity. Now, Ferocity is probably the one card, I think, in the recent set of balance patch changes that have received a major rework. Everything else here has been sort of like slight adjustments in cost or damage or what have you. Ferocity was completely reworked entirely here, and as you can see now, much different from its previous iteration. I almost said incantation. It is now an incantation. Now increases friendly Druid units levels by 2 in a 5x5 area for 4 gold. From its previous ability, which I believe was just a simple give leap to X unit, and then you draw a card off of it. And the iteration of that was okay. It wasn't really seeing a lot of play here. This one, I assume, is probably going to be seeing a lot more action. And the reason being is because the multi-summon cards of Druid is going to make this card a lot more scary. I'm talking cards like Pack of Wolves, Bear Patrol, and then either amplifying or split magic those runes. It creates a lot of potential for a huge burst of big statted units here, which can be very, very scary if played correctly. And I assume people are going to be trying out the red-white build. I've heard from the grapevine that a couple of red-white Ferocity builds are already up and running, doing some damage over in multiplayer. I get it's just the ability is so good, increasing those levels, and again with how many units you can get off of some single spells here, or spell combos even, it just gives a lot more power to the Ferocity as a card, and I'm very excited to see what this can do, and definitely expect to see it in some dedicated Druid builds here. It may not be a card that you see just generically everywhere, but certainly in those strategies that focus on the multi-summon aspect, the spells like Pack and Bear Patrol, maybe a few others if I'm not mistaken here, but yeah, definitely along those lines here. The multi-summons of Druids are going to lead to what makes this card pretty scary and pretty dangerous, so definitely keep an eye on this card because it is going to be probably popping up here in multiplayer over the next few weeks or so, I imagine. Maybe a week, maybe two, we'll see. But overall, very excited about this change. Very excited to see where I could fit this. But for now, let's go ahead and take a look at the next change. Actually, let's not go very far here as we're going to talk about Shredding Leaves next. This was probably the weirdest change they decided to put on this set of lists, or this list here. Shredding Leaves, now a 1 gold, 2 mana, previously just 1 gold, but dealing 25 to 38 damage to an enemy unit. I can kind of see what they were trying to go for here, make this sort of unique in its own right here, but giving it a little extra mana increase to correspond with the Druids. I believe currently this is one of the higher single target damage spells available to us for a pretty cheap cost as well. Thinking of Incinerate as the counterpart here. For 3 gold, I think you deal somewhere between like 31 to 35. Shredding Leaves, you get a wider pool here, but upwards of 38 damage, which can be pretty deadly. But even then, even with the damage increase, excuse me, I might say, I don't think this card is going to see a whole lot more play than it already was getting. Hell, maybe even less than it was if it was getting any play before. I kind of noted that this was probably just not worth running in decks here. I mean, mana has become such a resource that people want to preserve and play at the right moments for their big units, for their big legendaries, more often than not. And wasting 2 of the mana on just a simple burn damage spell doesn't feel like a proper use of it. I mean, I just don't see that people are going to be using this if they weren't already. I mean, Shredding Leaves was also a card that had a lot more better counterparts within other factions. So just to kind of have this card now be, while the biggest damage for a single, one of the bigger cheap damage spells, which is cool, I just don't see it really getting a lot of use here, and I'm pretty sure most people are going to agree on that point, which is fine, honestly. And like I said, there are a lot of better options in other factions, and if Shredding Leaves just wants to do its own thing and kind of recognize that it won't be used as much, then go for it. Be as unique as you want here in this case. But yeah, Shredding Leaves, receiving a little cost change, a little damage increase. Don't think it's going to help that card out much at all. So, yeah, let's go ahead and talk about our next balance note. Next up on the list is Shaman, another Druid change here. Feels like this list was primarily Druid stuff. But overall, Shaman looks like it's a free ability now. For the cost of his attack, you heal a unit for 5 each turn during combat phase, which is cool. It gives a little more life, a little more playability to the Shaman, although honestly, I don't think we're going to be seeing much of him. It's kind of a unit that has been overshadowed by Priest if people want that sort of healing aspect. Although, Shaman might actually compete for Priest slot now, because I think if you are timing it in a specific way or in the correct way, you can actually get more of a heal out of Shaman than you can for Priest. But Priest also comes with that little negative effect purge, so hard to say if we're going to see Shaman more often than not in the white-yellow builds here. I mean, I can already think of now Shaman being a pretty cool card for Dragon Knight, being able to heal a unit continually for 5 during each turn of the combat phase, and having that, not only the health increase, but the attack increase as well. Kind of like a mini level boost, if you will, a mini exotic growth, if you will. But yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of a thought out there to see if maybe that's a viable thing. Like I said, I don't think Shaman's going to be seeing much more play than he was already. At the very least, he now maybe competes with Priest for that slot in the yellow-white builds. Not much else to talk about here with this guy, though. Cool to see that he's now a free ability like the Priest, but we'll see if he can compete fairly with him as well. Let's go ahead and talk about the next note, though, shall we? Alright, and talking about our next change now, Living Vines on the change list here. Another buff, as you can see, now heals for 4 each turn during the combat phase, was previously at 2, which I think gives a little bit more playability to, again, the yellow-white builds that want to utilize Dragon Knight and Living Vines. I don't think, though, that Vines is going to be super impactful here, just because overall his baseline stats didn't increase, just the heal, which could keep him around longer when he's actually in combat, but if anything was one-shotting him before, it's going to keep one-shotting him now, because, again, you're not getting a baseline increase. At the very least, it's more survivability in the yellow white build. Again, back to the Dragon Knight, being able to heal. You can definitely do some heal Voltron stuff with that. Maybe make Vines this super big scary threat that continues to heal. Again, though I'm not sure it's going to change all that much, though, outside of that specific deck here. So again, not much else to talk about here. Cool change, but let's go ahead and move on into one of our first non-Druid related balance changes. And that first non-Druid related change is Man the Cannons. Of course, being damage increased from 13 to now 22, nearly doubled his the previous attack power of cannons, which is quite dangerous, honestly. I don't think people have really played around with how the crewmate decks work. I mean, this is right here the main crewmate play. The main win con of crewmate, or one of the main win con of crewmates, the payoff. The payoff, that's the word I was looking for before. The main payoff of crewmates and being able to cast multiple of them to deal more damage is certainly something I think a lot of decks can do, but now they also have the firepower to back it up here. Man the Cannons, I think, a very dangerous spell that people have just overlooked in general because there have been so many other things that have taken to the forefront. I think once people kind of start to, sit down and build crewmate decks and see how easy it is to generate crewmates from things like the Captain, the Grave Robberies, it'll be scary to see Man the Cannons be as dangerous as it is here. It kind of throws a little more power to the Necromancer pirate builds that I know people have been worried about here. Now not only do you have to compete with the big Vileroth, who has also been changing, you might notice off to the side of the screen, but we'll check back in with him in a moment. It now gives them Man the Cannons here with some crewmate synergy. Things like the Manfish, the Voyager. Actually, I don't think the Voyager is a crewmate. The Sea Witch is a crewmate for sure. A Great Right Shot, if anyone was playing that, that's a crewmate. The Salahar Spitefish. You kind of get the idea, though. The crewmates are in a lot of places, and I think that we'll probably be seeing Man the Cannons as the crewmate popularity starts to increase, or maybe just overall intrigue of the crewmate archetype increases. But we'll have to see. But let's go ahead and talk about the Vileroth now, shall we? I mean, I was going to say this for later, but I think because we're already next to it in here, it's worth talking about. Vileroth now becoming an 8/8 rather than a 7/8, which is cool, but I think I'm not really sure if it answers the problem that Vileroth provides. You see, before, Vileroth was a dragon that people could throw out consistently at low mana because Vileroth doesn't actually reset when you play him for the first time. Whatever Vileroths are in your deck while a storm is going will receive the mana discount and will ultimately be cheaper when they come into your hand. I think this does a fair job at perhaps limiting the amount of, consistency the Vileroth has, at least the dual Vileroth. I know some people were playing, Vileroth into Vileroth, which is pretty gross, but it's doable because they're at very cheap mana costs. I don't think that solves its problem, but I think the idea was that if you increase the cost of Vileroth, you can delay how often you're going to be seeing Vileroth, maybe. But again, not really sure about that. We'll have to see how it plays out. Admittedly, I haven't played too much of Vileroth in the live build. I played with him a ton back when he was first introduced over in testing, but I have yet to kind of retest him over here. From what I've heard from people, though, he's been a scary card in the Pirate Necromancer, and pretty much is a reason why that deck is doing so well right now. Whether or not that kind of hits this completely or definitely brings it down a peg has yet to be seen. Maybe some people who have first-hand experience with the deck can sound off below in the comments if the Vileroth change was, as significant as maybe it should not have been. I don't know. I feel like this maybe not enough to deal with the current circumstances, but like I said, first-hand player experience on that would be certainly appreciated. Let's go ahead now, though, and talk about some of the other dragons that were changed in this round of notes. All right, the next dragon to receive changes in this balance note was the Rakanoth, now becoming a 7-1 rather than a 7-3, which is cool, I will admit, but I don't really think helps Rakanoth all too much. The general game plan, I think, of Raka decks, if there have been any, have just been, you know, walk my Rakanoth down, explode for 30 to take 30 off the castle, and repeat for 90 damage, ideally, because you get 3 Rakanoths down to explode in the castle. That's 90 damage directly to the castle, and just straight 30 too, because, I mean, that doesn't really bother with spell resistance. Spell resistance, of course, does not block ability damage like this, so I think that's been the general game plan, if there has been one. But I think now that strategy could become a little easier for players to do, because Rakanoth coming down earlier and for less mana helps get that thing going, helps fuel the strategy a bit more quicker, and being able to time out maybe a sustain longer to get to the other side to explode for that big damage. Be curious to see if anyone can actually make this work here. I know some people are trying, but I think Raka does need to stride away from the general time bomb plan that he's got going on. I'd like to see something different for him. I think just running him out to self-destruct feels like it's not the use of a legendary dragon. We'll see, though, if I'm proven wrong on that. Hopefully we'll see some decks emerge out of it. But cool Rakanoth change to kind of give him some more playability. Alright, folks, and the final balance change that we can address here today is Mordanoth. Mordanoth now having a cheaper ability cost. As you can see, 1 gold rather than 2, which hopefully should give more playability to Mordanoth, much like Rakanoth before. Having a cheaper cost associated to him usually means you'll have more of his effect proc, hopefully. And Mordanoth in itself, I think, is a pretty scary unit here to have that consume, that sacrifice, the freeze explosion of 10 damage, and then healing itself for 20. I think people really have just been not practicing enough with Mordanoth, or at least not getting enough Mordanoth experience to recognize how dangerous this card can be here, which is understandable when you have slots being shared with like Dracula and Norabon. Things that have been so popular now for the Tombstone, and just the generically strong Dracula card is, you know, an easy one of, if not 2 of, slot in most Necromancer decks. So I can see how Mordanoth has just tough competition already. It's a shame, though, because I think I really do like Mordanoth's design, and really think he does work well in those Tombstone decks. It's just that he has a hard time shining because he is pretty expensive in the mana department, as well as having a decently cost ability here. But hopefully now the ability cost of 1 should maybe bring him into some spotlight here. We'll have to see, though, because of course, like I mentioned, he has some stiff competition in that legendary slot. But overall, I would say a solid change to Mordanoth, and overall a solid round of balance patches to kind of bring us into the holiday season a bit here. Alright, and with that being said, folks, that was, I believe, all of the balance changes that were addressed here. Overall, some things that are pretty interesting, some things that aren't really expecting to do a lot of damage, but a nice kind of mix, I think, to kind of give players a little bit of everything here. And very curious to see what people are coming out with. Very excited for those Ferocity decks, I will say. I'm very curious as to how some people have built theirs and how mine maybe compares to theirs. Very interested in seeing that play out here. But overall, let me know what you guys thought of the balance patches. We'd really like to hear your thoughts, as always, in the comments section below, whether you like the balance patch, whether you hate it. And be sure to join the Discord so that way you can find out more about these balance patches when they go live. I know they show up on Steam too, but if you want the more direct, as soon as it happens type of notes, be sure to follow the Discord, which is always linked in the description below. And while you're down there, if you haven't done so already, be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Be sure to share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. It is the best way that you can show your support to the channel, after all. We are very close to that 1K sub mark. It feels like every day. I think we're just close to around maybe a little more than 40 subs off of our goal here. So really hoping that you can join us on the journey if you haven't done so already. But yeah, I think that's going to be it for me for now. So until next time, guys, stay gaming.